Um, you know, the effort to end birthright citizenship is hardly something new. It's been the long-term goal of anti-Semitic and white nationalist groups for decades. The claim's largely based on the bigoted Great Replacement conspiracy theory, same conspiracy theory that has inspired a lot of deadly terrorist attacks in recent years. And we're hearing really uncomfortable echoes of some of that here in Congress in this day and age. You know, as we're listening to some of these statements, I was reminded of one of our predecessor statements here, the great Barbara Jordan, who at a critical moment in our country's history talked about we the people. And when that document was completed in September of 1787, neither she nor I nor Professor Frost were included in that document. But as she said, through the process of amendment, interpretation, and court decision, we were finally included. And as members of Congress now, we should not sit here and be idle spectators, much less participants in the diminution, the subversion, or the destruction of the Constitution. And I would submit that the effort we're seeing here today to try to reinterpret and twist the clear language and legislative history of the Birthright Citizenship Clause would be such a diminution, subversion, or destruction of the Constitution. Now, Professor Frost, you've studied this for quite a long time. You, unlike several of the people here, are not a contributor to Project 2025. We've heard a lot about the specific language subject to the jurisdiction of. Why did they choose that phrase?
Yeah, the Reconstruction Congress told us clearly what they wanted to do there. They wanted to exclude the children of diplomats and ambassadors. And they also discussed at length the need to exclude children born into Native American tribes, which were separate foreign sovereigns with whom we had treaty relations, with their own courts and laws.
It did strike me the inconsistency in claiming that an undocumented immigrant is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States when they are, in fact, subject to our criminal code, paying taxes, et cetera. Can you talk about that and talk about how that relates to the issue of the exception for diplomats and their children?
Yeah, sure. Of course, all children of immigrants, and all immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, are subject to the laws of the United States. President Trump knows that better than most, in that he is seeking to deport and enforce the immigration laws and other laws fully against this group. Also add something I mentioned before, which is the Reconstruction Congress was well aware there were people in the United States in violation of the law. Those were the enslaved African Americans brought to the United States in violation of federal law, and of course, the Citizenship Clause was intended to provide them with citizenship despite the fact they were there in violation of US law.
I noticed you reacting to some of the testimony about the U.S. being some kind of outlier with respect to birthright citizenship, or having, it looked like you might have a different interpretation. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, with all due respect to Mr. O'Brien, who is a deep expert in U.S. immigration law, I don't think he is familiar with the laws of the 32 other countries that have birthright citizenship, automatic birthright citizenship, just like the United States. In Canada, if you're born in Canada, regardless of who your parents are, you're a citizen. That's why Senator Ted Cruz had to renounce his Canadian citizenship in 2014, because he was born in Canada to a U.S. citizen mother.
Thank you. I also was struck by the idea that we would be putting a rather strange burden upon our maternity wards in our states if every time someone is born, they have to determine the citizenship or the immigration status of their parents. And how would that play out? I mean, does the delivery nurse have to ask which border the person came across, whether or not they checked in, whether they filed an asylum claim, or whether maybe they just overstayed their visa to study here if they were, for example, from South Africa? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It would impose enormous bureaucratic burden on hospitals, on state agencies, on our already overburdened immigration officials, and on the parents of newborn children. And as an immigration lawyer, I will say many people lack documentation of their citizenship or of their immigration status if they're lawful permanent residents. They may not be able to show that. And so we are asking these people at the time of their child's birth to prove this or risk having their child be deemed an undocumented immigrant from the moment it's born.
Okay, I do think it's interesting that this is hardly the open and shut case that our colleagues would suggest. Senator Cruz was recently quoted as saying that's actually a disputed legal question. There are serious scholarly arguments on both sides, et cetera. But with that, I see my time has expired, so I would just have a unanimous consent request to enter into the record a statement of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights.